Hi there, and welcome to this day in history for June 13th. June 13th is the 164th day of the year in the Gregorian calendar, 165th in leap years, with 201 days remaining to the end of the year. Today's word is affabulation. Affabulation is a noun, and what an interesting word. I discovered that in English, affabulation is an archaic word, as in very old and no longer in use, and that it means the moral of a fable. But I also discovered that in French, affabulation means a made-up story, a fabrication, or a flat-out lie. Somewhat different but related like distant cousins, these meanings. So I kept looking and I discovered that whether in English or in French, the word affabulation evolves from a Latin word that means to make up stories, to tell a fable. So both the French and English definitions are correct. The French use has evolved toward the telling a lie definition, and the English use went more toward meaning the moral of the story, and then fell out of use. Either way, the word affabulation is worth looking into and tucking into your back pocket. I was not able to find a first known use date for this word, affabulation. If you have a word you'd like me to explore in the Word of the Day section, pop it into the comments, and I'll add it to the list. And with that, on June 13th, 1774, Rhode Island became the first of Britain's North American colonies to ban the importation of slaves. Ahead of the Lewis and Clark expedition, Meriwether Lewis and 4 companions sighted the Great Falls of the Missouri River on June 13, 1805. On June 13, 1966, the United States Supreme Court ruled in Miranda versus Arizona that the police must inform suspects of their rights before questioning them. U.S. President Lyndon B. Johnson nominated Solicitor General Thurgood Marshall to become the first black justice in the U.S. Supreme Court on June 13, 1967. We have a playlist of episodes for this day in history, as well as a playlist of single subjects called How About That, and Words of the Day, and a playlist called There's a Word for That, all right here on this channel, and I'll leave links to those playlists for you. Today's song is The Long and Winding Road by the Beatles. This was on the A side of a single, and the B side was For You Blue. It was also listed in this #1 entry, but today we're going to just talk about The Long and Winding Road. This was inspired by the Scottish countryside leading to and around a property that Paul had bought. He loved that property, and he wrote this song as if someone like Ray Charles was going to sing it. Written by Paul, but credited to the Lennon-McCartney writing team, as they did. And Paul said of the song that The Long and Winding Road, what he saw was that it was about the unattainable, the door you never quite reach, the road you never get to the end of. That said, the Beatles were beginning to unravel in 1969 due to several factors. They had a good bit of recorded material that still needed to be spun into an album to go with the documentary Let It Be. George and John had asked their new manager, who, by the way, Paul didn't like, that new manager, but George and John had asked the new manager to involve the American music producers Phil Spector, famous for his wall of sound technique, which was a big orchestral sound, asked Phil Spector to spin this music into an album. The big orchestral sound was, by the way, the other end of the continuum from what Paul had in mind for The Long and Winding Road. He went along with it at first because he felt he had to in order to get along and keep peace with his fracturing group, but when it came back all dressed up with the orchestration and the chorus, choral sounds behind it, he hated it. In fact, Paul used this incident as one of the points when he went to English High Court to disband the Beatles. He has recorded other versions of it, more to his liking, and there's actually several versions of Paul doing it in a simpler way. I found one that I think is probably just about what he meant. Back to today's song, though. It was released as a single in May of 1970. The Long and Winding Road hit number 1 on June 13th, 1970, for the first of 2 weeks in that number 1 spot. It was the Beatles' 20th and last number 1 hit. Alrighty, thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share this video with a link in your email, messaging, or social media. If you enjoy this series, you can check out the playlist that contains these videos. I'll put a link to that in the description. That description lives on YouTube, so for other platforms, I'll include a link to my blog page that's called No Really. You can also find me on Rumble, BitChute, and Odyssey. All those links in that description. Alrighty, that's all I can think of right now. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Alrighty, back to work. I think we got it this time.